Good afternoon.
Hi, Susanna. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We just wait a few moments for everyone to log in. Hi, Tom. Hi, Karina.
Hi.
It's so lovely to see some familiar faces that I haven't seen for a while, especially for Lake. It's a long time
Hi,
ago.
Susanna. It's been an
Since we
extremely
have
long
seen
time.
each other. Lovely to see you. We'll do proper introductions in a while,
Okay.
but it's really great. Thank you, everyone, for taking some time aside to be my guinea pigs for today, which I hope is going to be interesting. I will definitely learn a lot. And the idea is that you also take some good things away. I think Carl, Andy, and Tom now have been in some of my workshops anyway, so they're familiar with my style. And I'll get you to work because it's not just about me talking, it's really about us working together and discussing the topic that is occupying us here today. And it's so beautiful because we have people, Jushra is calling from the US. We have some more people calling from the UK. Karina, you're in France. Falake, are you in the Middle East still?
No. I'm in Chelmsford at the moment, Essex.
Oh, you're back in the UK. So let me share. Well, I don't need to share the screen for a moment. I have slides, but as you know, I try to avoid the use of the slides when I can because I like looking at your faces and I think it's nice for us to be in a group. You know me already, but I will introduce myself again just in case, just to put the right context. So as you know, I have 30 years worth of experience, hence my grace. Most of that experience has been in the corporate world, building my way up to becoming a CFO in large organizations. I also had a spell when I set up and grew my own business. And for the last 4 years, what I have been doing is finding a way to reutilize all of that experience and pass it on to the next generation. Some of you have had experience with me in the mentoring capacity, some of you in training workshop. What I'm trying to do now, as you know, I have a book, which is a professional development book, and I'm writing my second book. And this second book is all about confidence because it is the one thing that comes up over and over again whenever I'm working with people. This is the thing we all need a little bit more of, myself included. So when I realized that the topic for my next book was going to be confidence, I was relieved, but at the same time, it was hard because I thought, right, and how do I tackle this particular challenge? So I started thinking about what are some of the skills that have really helped me in my journey, and what are out of those skills, which ones do I think are particularly influential in confidence? And I think communication skills is definitely up there, and hence the topic of this workshop. So hence that you are here even before I publish the book, and I'm sure you will have plenty of useful thoughts today to make this particular topic more impactful for people when they come across it, whether that is reading it or attending the workshop. Are you all up for that? Great.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Things to remember. I like to work putting things into practice. This is what today will be all about. And also I think there is the gift of feedback. Those of you who have been in my virtual boardroom know exactly what I'm talking about, that it's really valuable, I think, in training sessions. So what we'll try and do is throughout the session, we will put things into practice. So you need to be prepared to just go with the flow and not worry too much about what we say or how we say it. And also I will be sharing my feedback with you, but also I encourage you to share your own feedback with the rest of the group, because we always learn a lot through observing others and just connecting with our own situation in whatever it is we're talking about. So do I have your collaboration for that?
Yes.
I'm sure you're all dying to meet each other, but before we do that, I'm going to ask you to do a personal exercise first, because you will use your conclusions from that personal exercise in your introduction to the group. Is that okay?
Yes.
Good. I am going to share my screen for a moment. Here's the exercise, which I'm just going to give you all about 3 minutes or 4 minutes to think about where is your starting point with regards of communication. So the questions you can ask yourself to help you in that process is, what do I do to improve my communication skills at the moment? What are the areas where I have the opportunity to practice? For instance, do you do presentations at work? To whom do I communicate? In what ways? Because there are many different ways in which we can do that, in person, online, in writing. What do I feel when I communicate in each of these modalities? What do I particularly enjoy when I communicate? And what do I fear or avoid regarding my communication? I'll leave the questions up here so you don't have to worry about writing them all down. But if you now I'll just give you about 2-3 minutes to think about it. And what I'd like you to do is to write a conclusion. So what have these questions made you think about with regards of where you're at the moment in terms of your communication? Any questions? Welcome.
So you said we should conclude by writing what we feel when we read these questions.
Yes. If is there anything you become aware of by asking yourself these questions? Is there anything, for instance, I realize that I do a lot of communication every day when I'm mentoring. I'm constantly giving little presentations. So that would be a conclusion of where I am at the moment with regards to my communication. But you will all have different situations. Are we ready then? You all have one conclusion as your starting point. So who would like to break the ice? What I'd like you to do now is take, not very long, probably about 90 seconds, just to tell the rest of the group, because I have the joy of knowing you all, but nobody else does. Introduce yourself with your name. What is it that you do? And what is your conclusion about your starting point with regards to communication?
I'll go first.
Go, Falake.
Hi, everyone. My name is Falake Togunloju. Most people call me Fola for short because that's easier. I work as a fractional finance director at the moment, and I work for 2 companies part-time. My background is mostly VC-backed or private equity-backed businesses and owner-managed businesses. I will say as an accountant, my superpower is cash flow management. So I would say that's where my strongest skill set is. I have been an accountant for, I think, 18 years now. I still feel quite young, and I don't believe I'm old enough to have worked for 18 years, but I have been working for about 18 years. And I love what I do. And that is it about me. About the communication, I think the most thing that resonated with me was 2 things: who I'm communicating with and my fears of communication. And I would like to say both of them are tied together. So I communicate better, obviously, in my comfort zone and in topics that I really understand. But if I'm told to face an unknown entities, like for example, when I have to face investors that I haven't spoken to before, the fear creeps in. And what really creeps in is not the imposter syndrome, but if I'm going to communicate well enough to them at that level. And it resonates with me each time. I spend a lot of my days communicating with different types of people. And I realize I communicate best when I'm literally sometimes put on the spot talking about a topic I understand. And I probably would ignore or not even realize who I am talking to at that point, and I would literally just flow. No. But you need to give me a heads up and tell me an investor is coming next week. I would like to meet you. And I literally go into panic mode as to what am I going to say? How do I prepare for it? Am I going to sound, should I say, strategic enough? Not intelligent enough. Ironically, I always think, do I sound strategic enough? Because I think sometimes I have this notion that a finance director should speak a certain way. And because I speak another way, I would almost literally panic in fear when it comes to communicating. But whilst I'm in the middle of it, I find out that I am not too bad at it, and I just should stop over processing it just way too much.
Thank you for that. I think there's a lot of, we'll do a proper debrief on the introductions later, but very interesting that you talk about performing well when we are on the spot. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to do a lot of improvisation. and also the idea that actually one of our biggest challenges is handling our own inner world and our worries. So hopefully that's some of the things we will be working on today. So thank you for liking. Who would like to go next?
Yeah, I don't mind going. Hi everyone, my name's Tom. I work for a business called St Modwin. We're a private equity-backed real estate business. So I've been here a couple of years, and my sort of time previous to that was at KPMG. So I started out as an auditor and kind of moved away from that into more of a kind of acquisitions type role, which I'm doing now. Communicating, sort of my role involves communicating at all levels and all different forms. So generally, I feel pretty comfortable with most forms of communication. I fully agree with Fola here that if I've got time to think about a presentation I've got to give, the heart just starts racing and I really start overthinking things and get in your own head. Whereas you know, put on the spot in a meeting, if someone says, "Oh, can you just take us through this?" and you think, "Yep, I can do that. No time to think about it. Let's just go for it." Likewise, if you're doing a presentation in front of people, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. And putting yourself in the other side and listening to someone, you know, you just want them to do well and you want to learn from them. And for some reason, when I'm doing it myself, I get in my head and think that they're all looking at me like I'm on Dragon's Den and I've got to prove a real point. So that's kind of the thing for me, just like prepared presentations in front of a group of people when I'm kind of searching for that golden nugget of a line or information, which it might not exist.
And I think it's finding the balance. One of the things that I have found in my own experience is that I need to prepare because that gives me the framework to be able to guide a meaningful conversation. Like for today, I have a plan of my session, but of course then leaving that aside and improvising where you can is just the perfect spot. So thank you, Tom. That's great. Who would like to go next?
I go.
Go, Karina.
Well, my English is not as good as yours. So this is the first problem with communication, the different languages.
Yes.
First, my name is Karina. I am from Argentina. I was born in Argentina. I live in France. And my company gives CFO fractional services around the world, mostly in LATAM, which is hard because LATAM is complicated in terms of finance. And so I have to communicate in many languages. This is something that it's important for communication because sometimes you have to not only think in different languages, but also think in the culture. So I was born in Argentina, but I went to all my life to an English school. So like I sort of have the English culture in myself. And then when I finished school, I went to live in France. So I have a little bit of the France culture, and now I'm living in France. So you know, I adapt myself to the situation and the culture to communicate. I learn a lot from TED Talks. I like watching people that prepare themselves to give this type of talks. It can be TED Talks or people that really are experts in this type of presentations. I like watching how they move when they talk. How they prepare the subject they are going to present, the time they have a very, very short time to present, and this is a very good quality. I don't have that quality. So I separate myself into Karinas. It's like I can speak in front of people without any problem. I'm very good at improvising, but if I have to talk in public, I really don't know how to do it. Even if I try to make a reel in Instagram, I'm so bad at it. It's like two different persons in one body. I don't know if
Karina, I'm going to start telling you off right now. Stop putting yourself down, woman. We will talk about this in the debrief, but this is what I like doing practical exercises because our natural tendencies just come up. So great to be modest, but you have lots of beautiful qualities, and perhaps putting your believed, because they are believed, shortfalls in front of everyone. We don't have to do that. Thank you. No, I think
Yeah.
you've made a few very, very valid points. Culture is super important, and also technique. One of the sections today will briefly cover technique, because clearly there is something to do with your natural talent and how much you enjoy and all of that, and whether you know what you're talking about. But there are things we can do to build your toolbox and be better communicators. So we'll be discussing that. Thank you, Karina.
No, thank
Who
you.
would like to go next, Andy or Yusra?
Hi, everybody. I'm Yusra. Yusra Mansour. Been in Dubai. Actually, I'm from Yemen. Born and in Yemen, moved to US when I was young, 6 years old. I went to school here in New York and moved to Dubai around 12 years ago. I worked with the natural resources company, Glencoe, for 10 years as a finance director. Then I moved to an oil and gas company in Abu Dhabi until up recently last year. Now I'm back in US looking for other opportunities. I don't know, really. For me, going to school in New York, I was very outspoken. I never had any issue, which I've just started now recognizing that maybe I have an issue in communication. But I've never had I never thought of myself having an issue communicate. I've always communicated well, really interacted with people very well. But I don't know, recently, I don't know, and it depends with who I'm talking to. I could really, I mean, if whoever I'm communicating with, I don't know, if I feel comfortable, really, Susanna, I cannot picture point where what is the issue with me right now. I'm really turning to be introvert every day, each and every day. So that's when, like, when I talk to you and like I really maybe need to participate in and these talk shows, maybe master, and just I can figure out what's wrong with me. And also I think in culture sense, I've worked with in different background, not communicating English that well with different people with different background. So at this point of my I guess my career level, I think I need to really tackle issue that I really need to face communication, that I have a communication issue. Yeah, but I think whoever I talk to is what makes sense. I've talked to you many times, Susanna, and we've sometimes talk very well, but I meet other people, or when I'm told to present something, I completely just blank out. I mean, I don't talk well. So it's a place that I need to figure out where I need to improve.
Great. Well, I hope you're in the right place. That's certainly the intention, that you all walk away with some specific tips on what to do next. So, Carl or Andy? Andy, you're on unmute.
Yep. I'm Andy. I am Group FP&A Director for a carbon certificates trading business called South Pole. Again, like all of you, I'm communicating all the time. I'm communicating, up to board level, across the C-suite, but also sort of across all the divisional businesses with my team. So lots of communication. The communication I like is when I know the subject really well, and I know the point that I want to make really well. Equally, when I understand the audience, where I struggle with communication is, actually if I'm completely put on the spot and I haven't had time to reflect on how I treat it, what is the message I want to communicate, and something that I've noticed more recently is actually I tend to react to how I think things are being received. So I think there are times where I need to have a thicker skin and not totally focus on how things are being received, but focus on the message that I want to give.
That's a really interesting point you bring, because sometimes how we think is being received is not how it's actually being received. So I think in any situation in life, but also with our communication, and we will probably talk about this in the different sessions that we're going to have, finding a neutral point really helps, because it's never as bad as you think. On the contrary, and at the same time, I agree with you. What we can do is we can put our messages across with the best intention, but clearly adapting what we say and how we say it to our audience is really important. And it's striking that balance. Thank you, Andy. Carl, last but not least.
Thank you. Yep, my name's Carl. I'm operating as a fractional CFO at the moment. I'm based in the UK on the South Coast. I've got a couple of clients. I tend to work with SMEs, owner-managed businesses that have received investment, that type of thing. So, like all of you, different sort of levels of communication, whether it's with people at the base end of the business or people boardroom investors, etc. And I think all of you have covered a lot of the points I wanted to make. I think Andy in particular, the point around perception of how people are receiving your message, I think is a big thing for me. It can be a bit derailing, and needing to sort of manage your way through that. And I think also different types of people. I'm quite direct with my communication, or so I've been told, and I'm probably quite true, being an accountant and being sort of you tend to be that way inclined. I think you just want to deliver the message quickly and on point. And I struggle with people who are completely the other way inclined and tend to fill the space with a lot of fluff and can easily get, I guess, distracted from what the point of a conversation or a communication is. Mm-hmm. So that for me can be a bit of a challenge. I think sort of mentally I struggle with that. But one-to-one, I have a lot of one-to-ones. I have a lot of small meetings, but in terms of bigger presentations, it's not something that I'm sort of used to doing. And the thought of it, I guess, doesn't fill me with glee. But at the moment, it's something I don't have to do. So, but certainly with people I know, it's a lot easier to deliver the message. I think with people you don't know, it becomes a lot more difficult, and then you get into sort of challenges mm-hmm. with things like the perception of how people are receiving the message, I think.
Excellent. Great. So I've got lots of notes which we'll share later, but I think thank you all for introducing yourselves. You can see there's a lot of commonalities in the room, and regardless, here we have a group of people that do similar jobs, but actually regardless of the jobs that we do, we all need to engage in communication, and it's a useful skill to develop. So I'll tell you, going back to the point that Yushra mentioned earlier, because we corresponded, and I said, well, a way to start with your communication training, in my view, the easiest way would be joining a public speaking club. I belong to a club called Toastmasters. You may have heard me recommend this before. I only found it late in my career, 4 years ago, believe it or not. But boy, do I wish that I had joined a group much earlier in my career, because whilst I was always a good communicator, confident, and fairly comfortable with it, I always had that imposter syndrome, that doubt, that worrying about how is the message going to be received. We'll talk about 3 particular things. We'll talk about our comfort zone, which I think is one of the things that doing something like this really helps you to do, to get out of your comfort zone. The second one is to do with technique and learning specific strategies, like how to structure speech or how to slow down, how to modulate your pace, and how to vary your language. So all of those things that really empower your communication. And the last thing, more importantly, I think, is the ambition, because I have experienced it myself, going from, yes, I did it and I enjoyed it, but suffering. And I've also known a lot of people that I have seen at the beginning very really struggle with presentations, whether that might be speaking in a group full of people, just in a meeting room at work, whether you have lots of people, to standing on a stage. Some people genuinely struggle with that and they suffer. And you can see the progress that we can make just by working at it. So the impact can be enormous. I remember the first time that I went to a Toastmasters meeting, I didn't know what to expect, so I went along. And at one point in the meeting, I was asked to contribute. And I thought, oh no, why me? It was in the middle of COVID on Zoom. And so I participated. And what I did was to participate in a section of the meeting that is all about improvising little speeches. So you're giving a cue, either a couple of words or a sentence, and you have to develop a speech for about 2 minutes. Oh my God, what came out of my mouth that day? I walked out of that meeting feeling totally terrified, thinking, these people are going to think I'm this natty woman that just turned up. They're not going to let me join. I went into that neurosis, that we sometimes go into. Thank God that it was all in my head. And of course, they did invite me to join. Because, those things that you worry, why would people want to hear what I have to say? What if I go blank? What if I say something stupid? That is familiar with all of you, I guess, isn't it? And in fact, what I did when I joined, because I like to do things well, I said, okay, to put myself on the spot, I'm going to also compete. Because one of the things that Toastmasters does, and I'm sure other public speaking clubs as well, they organize competitions. And that's where you really put yourself on the spot and you learn and practice. So the first year, I didn't get very far at all. But I realized this was like my opportunity to give it a good go. The second year, I joined again. And I went all the way to the final in Spanish for Portugal, France, and Spain. The third year, I didn't do so well, but it doesn't matter. I kept going. And this year, I was in Casablanca last weekend competing again. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed the whole process, but also how much my confidence has grown throughout. So this is just one way in which I work on my confidence. And I'm sure there are other ways. But if you haven't, Yusra, I know you thought about it, just try it, just go. Because we put things off, and I have seen people blossom, myself included, just by that power of just having a go at practicing. We talked a little bit about our comfort zone and how some of you are more comfortable when you know what you're talking about. Some of you are more comfortable on a one-to-one basis. And the first thing, and I think this is why it's important to cover this point now, one of the best things we can do to get better at communicating is to be prepared to take the mickey out of ourselves and be prepared to fail and to be prepared to say something silly. Because you know what? It is not the end of the world. And once we acknowledge that it's okay if we fail, then we can connect with a lot of good things inside us. Things from how strong we might feel at doing something to actually connecting with people and motivating them and inspiring them and connecting with them. So to give you an example, one of the little speeches that I did many months and meetings after this first one that I was talking about on a table topic, it was life as a condom. When I was given that prompt, I just froze. You have 30 seconds that you can think about. I can't remember what I said in my speech, but what I do know is that I had a room full of 30 people crying their eyes out, having a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it because I went with the flow. Fola talked earlier about flow. So the first thing you might want to work on as you embark on your communication journey is, it's okay if I fall flat on my face. It is okay if I say something silly. It's really not the end of the world, because when we get rid of that, almost like the shell suit that we put on, that is very rigid sometimes, that is a barrier that doesn't really help us. And I think confidence is an election. It's a choice that we have to put ourselves in front of our fears, in front of uncomfortable emotions, and do things that we would otherwise avoid. You can disagree with me if you want. So technique, and this is where we'll do the briefing on our introduction. I can't go through all the techniques, and I'm sure you can find books. There are public speaking books, communication books that you can read. But one of the things I learned that have been very useful, and I use it a lot in the virtual boardroom as well, is trying to identify and stop your filler words. We all have filler words, the ums and the ahs, and the you know whats, and the and repeating ourselves. We all use these words, some of us more, some of us less. And I used to have a friend, well, she's still my friend, but I haven't seen her for a while because she still lives in England, Nikki. And I never, have to confess, never had the courage to tell her. But even as a friend, out of every sentence that she would say, with 5 words, 2 of them would be, you know, you know, you know. And I can't imagine how distracting it must have been for her in her work and people. And she had a team, she had quite a senior role. And yet she would just go on and on with this, you know. So what I'm going to do here is put some questions up. So I want you to reflect back on your introductions, yes? And perhaps think about how do you think you did with this particular thing? And then we will debrief a little bit as well. What unnecessary words or expressions do I use when I communicate? And you can take a few moments to perhaps write them down. Do they predominate both when I speak casually or in more formal contexts? Do I use them a little, quite a bit, or way too much? Who would like to break the ice? Karina.
So good.
Go ahead if you want. Okay. In Spanish, we use when you are trying to say the next phrase or the next word, as I just said, because we think and we try while we are thinking, we are trying to put something in the middle, like the space.
Yes.
What I do when I speak is that I consciously say to myself, do not use all these things to, you know, while you're thinking. I will say it's quite a bit that I do it. I am really working in not committing this mistake. And this is something that bothers people. Like when you're talking and you're making these noises, they get distracted. So I'm trying to really work hard not to do that when I speak with anybody, a friend or in an important meeting.
I agree, Karina. Actually, I only caught you with a couple of you knows, so it wasn't particularly noticeable because it really doesn't help you. And you said quite a few things like, started by my English is not as good as yours, and then I don't have that quality. And I'm not suggesting we can't be modest, but we need to choose where and when. So just observe yourself in the future and think, do I really need to say this, or shall I just bite my lip? Because sometimes we're just trying to justify ourselves, and that just shows that perhaps there's a less confidence there than we'd like.
Okay.
Who would like to go? No, thank you.
I'll go next. I have 2 filler words of choice. The first being, you know, and I use it quite a lot to the extent that I do not even realize I am using it. I actually have to be extremely conscious before I actually hear it. So it's one of those things that I don't think I even knew I used to use it until it was pointed out to me, because even if I was trying to be conscious about it, I wouldn't even hear it.
Yes.
That I use it a lot when I am speaking casually and when I'm speaking quite quickly, and obviously when I am nervous as well. So the only way I have realized to not use it is when I pace myself, like I am doing right now. I am literally pacing what I'm saying.
So she's just given us
it.
some very good tips with regards to communication. Slow your pace, it really helps. Be consciously aware of that. Brilliant, brilliant. And I think you did very well in your presentation, your opening, because you clearly were aware of that and mindful. I think I didn't catch you any M's at all. But we can also be mindful, not just of the M's and the R's, but the words that we use too much when they're not necessary. You use the word actually. I use the word excellent. So just listen to yourself, understand what is your tendency that almost like it just doesn't feel right, because it's not always there onwards. But overall, one of the things that I loved about how you presented yourself is you were very positive. And I love when you say, my superpower is. Great example of how to empower yourself when you're communicating to others, because what we say is how we feel, and how we feel is what others feel as well. We're like radios, really, with waves. So well done on that.
I can probably say thank you to you, because I worked with Susana about 2 years ago now, I believe. And yes, I was a wreck when I met her.
Well, it wasn't. She wasn't.
I would never have used the word superpower before. I mean, after that, like before that, I would have.
What do you all think? You're welcome to provide feedback as well to each other. Any comments?
I thought that where you were pacing yourself there talking, so for some context, I found that really useful. So I'm getting married a week on Saturday, and I've got to do a speech in front of 120 people. So I'm taking everything I can from all of you to get through that. So yeah, the way that you talked and just slowed it down, and it still sounded absolutely fine. What you were saying is kind of very timely advice. So thank you for that.
Congratulations, Tom. We're all going to be thinking about you. And what great timing, because it's a big thing giving your wedding speech, right?
Yeah, try not to get my head too much about it. And when this email popped up from you, I thought, absolutely, yeah, volunteer for that. This can only be good.
Do you want to then take the opportunity that you're speaking to share your thoughts on your presentation?
I can do, yeah. So, oh, there we go. I just said, that's, I think that's my filler word, and it just comes so naturally that I don't realise it. I think the first time I realised it, I was interviewing someone, and I was recording the session because I hadn't interviewed people before, and then I listened to it back, and I was like, like, how many times have I said here? It's really hard to concentrate on what I'm saying. So that just comes naturally to me, and I think it's probably because I speak quite quickly as well, and I get nervous, and so I feel like I need to fill the space. So if I try and slow down now, like Fola's just done, it feels so unnatural.
But you get used to it. I used to be such a speedy talker that my tongue would twist all the time. So I go like my tongue, and it says you're tongue twisting. So slowing down, even though it may appear at the beginning unnatural, it's very powerful because it gives you time to think. And more importantly, it gives your audience time to incorporate what you're saying and understand you properly. And also the power of the pause. You must try sometimes. If I'm just talking, like putting together every sentence that there is no moment of like theatrical point. And if you say something important, if you just pause for a moment, it makes such a massive impact on your audience. It's almost like a way to grab their attention. So we think it's the opposite, that if we don't carry on talking, we lose them. On the contrary. So introduce some pauses on your wedding speech and just breathe. And when you feel free to take a drink of water in the middle of your speech. Don't be afraid. So things that I observed when Tom presented himself. I agree, you've got your arms. You were very confident, however. You talk about being nervous, but it didn't show. I certainly didn't see it. And that's something to bear in mind as well, that sometimes how we feel in the arms inside is not how people perceive the message. What I would say in your case is you're very laid back when you talk. You know, it's like you're there with your mates in the pub. And depending on who you're talking to, you may choose to present yourself differently. Yusha, for instance, is just saying, she's here, she's down here, little Yusha. And now that we are talking to people all the time online, this is our window shop, our shop window. And we need to put those lovely goods out there to be seen. There you go. And Tom, you've just changed your position. How can everybody see the difference that it makes?
As opposed to back here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you talk to us now, it's totally different.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's something you don't think about. It's really useful feedback.
Good. Any other comments from anyone on Tom's thread?
I liked the sort of casual, laid-back approach. I mean, I agree in terms of where you position yourself, that might be slightly different, but you did come across as quite casual, quite relaxed, and for me that makes you seem quite approachable.
I agree, and I think in this context is great. But if you are giving a presentation at work, perhaps it's something you can think about, because what tends to come out through our little improvisations is our natural tendencies, things we do without even thinking about. But thank you, Andy, and thank you for coming to Tom's defense. I like that.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it.
What about you, Andy? What do you feel?
I'm pretty confident. I've got a lot of filler words. I think they're probably and and it's, for me, it's about speed. It's about wanting to have a really clear message of what I want to deliver and trying to keep up with that. So as I'm trying to do now, I think trying to slow myself down so I can ensure my thoughts can keep up with what I'm saying sounds like a really good bit of advice.
I agree. No, I'm not going to repeat some of the things we talked about already, but I agree. You do the yo, which is a little bit like it reminds me of a colleague that I had, beloved colleague from Ireland. Yo. But other than that, is your presentation was perfect. I didn't pick on any particular things that were worth sharing. Yes. So you're off the hook, and well done.
Thank you.
Carl, what about you?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I can't remember what I said and how I said it, but generally, I know I use a lot. Here we go. The other thing I tend to do is I can sort of elongate my words, and so when I'm talking, trying to get that thought process to catch up, might just really, drag or repeat the same word and sort of go and that type of thing. Doing it again. I think I might need to stop talking.
I won't put you on the spot. No, I agree. You do have some filler words. In your case, the one I noticed was the and the fact that you're not looking at the camera, because you must have, you're looking at us here.
Yeah, I got two screens.
You're always talking at here. At this, I have a window in front of me, and I just think when eye contact is so important, and you do this. Clearly, this is just a logistical thing of how your screen is set up. But when we are presenting in real life to a room of people, whether that is in a meeting room or in a big stage, connecting with everyone is really important. So it's not something that we can test here because we're online, but just be mindful that that eye contact is super important. And what I'd like to do next is we're going to do some case studies. Those of you who have been on my virtual boardroom, you'll understand what we're talking about, but we have short case studies. Well, I have 3 that I have prepared, but I'm quite happy if anybody wants to replace one of the case studies with a personal situation that they have to deal with, then by all means, we will do that. But we'll do the first one from the list that I have. And the idea behind these case studies is that we work with a scenario that is common, because what I'm looking to get out of this particular role plays is not just saying to you, we've done the technical thing now. It's not how can we do things different, but perhaps thinking wider, thinking at the situation, what that might mean for the other person, things that are very difficult to actually consider if you're, it's not something you learn at speaking school. It's just something, I want to go a little bit deeper into how we can be more effective as communicators with real life problems and scenarios. You're up for that? Let me share the screen again. How are we doing for time? We're good, I think. Excellent. So what we will do is I will share the case studies. Sorry, I will put them. I don't have them here. I need to send them to you. Hang on a second. Yeah, and paste. I'll stop sharing for a moment. So can I have, because we won't have time to do one case study per person, who would like to be the guinea pig to do the role play on the first one?
I was going to say, depends what the role play is about. Get any hint on that? So.
It's very simple. This one is about requesting a salary increase. So I will write in the chat the brief, which is, let me see, so you can read it. There you go. So I'll give you 5 minutes to read. So I want everyone to read this case study and jot some notes as to how it is you would approach that conversation. Any questions, welcome, as you read through, if you have any doubts. And the first one will just make it apparent and easy for everyone to do the others. The things I would say on your particular presentation that I want you to think about in the communication was what I already said. Just be, at the same time as you're being mindful of your filler words, be mindful of not using undermining language, because it really doesn't help you. And you said quite a few things like, started by, my English is not as good as yours, and then I don't have that quality. And I'm not suggesting we can't be modest, but we need to choose where and when. So just observe yourself in the future and think, do I really need to say this, or shall I just bite my lip? Because sometimes we're just trying to justify ourselves, and that just shows that perhaps there's a less confidence there than we'd like.
Okay.
Who would like to go? No, thank you.
I'll go next. I have 2 filler words of choice. The first being, you know, and I use it quite a lot, to the extent that I do not even realize I am using it. I actually have to be extremely conscious before I actually hear it. So it's one of those things that I don't think I even knew I used to use it until it was pointed out to me. Even if I was trying to be conscious about it, I wouldn't even hear it.
Yes.
That I use it a lot when I am speaking casually, and when I'm speaking quite quickly, and obviously when I am nervous as well. So the only way I have realized to not use it is when I pace myself, like I am doing right now. I am literally pacing what I'm saying.
So she's just given us
Use it.
some very good tips with regards to communication. Slow your pace, it really helps. Be consciously aware of that. Brilliant. And I think you did very well in your presentation, your opening, because you clearly were aware of that and mindful. I think I didn't catch you any M's at all. But we can also be mindful, not just of the M's and the R's, but the words that we use too much when they're not necessary. You use the word actually. I use the word excellent. So just listen to yourself, understand what is your tendency that almost like it just doesn't feel right, because it's not always there onwards. But overall, one of the things that I loved about how you presented yourself is you were very positive. And I love when you say, my superpower is. Great example of how to empower yourself when you're communicating to others, because what we say is how we feel, and how we feel is what others feel as well. We're like radios, really, with waves. So well done on that.
I should probably say thank you to you, because I worked with Susana about 2 years ago now, I believe. And yes, I was a wreck when I met her.
Well, it wasn't. She wasn't.
I would never have used the word superpower before. I mean, after that, like before that, I would have.
What do you all think? You're welcome to provide feedback as well to each other. Any comments?
I thought that where you were pacing yourself there talking, so for some context, I found that really useful. So I'm getting married a week on Saturday, and I've got to do a speech in front of 120 people. So I'm taking everything I can from all of you to get through that. So yeah, the way that you talked and just slowed it down, and it still sounded absolutely fine. What you were saying is kind of very timely advice. So thank you for that.
Congratulations, Tom. We're all going to be thinking about you. And
you.
what great timing, because it's a big thing giving your wedding speech, right?
Yeah, try not to get my head too much about it. And when this email popped up from you, I thought, absolutely, yeah, volunteer for that. This can only be good.
Do you want to then take the opportunity that you're speaking to share your thoughts on your presentation?
I can do, yeah. So, oh, there we go. I just said it. That's, I think that's my filler word, and it just comes so naturally that I don't realise it. I think the first time I realised it, I was interviewing someone, and I was recording the session because I hadn't interviewed people before, and then I listened to it back, and I was like, oh, like how many times have I said, oh, Mahir, it's really hard to concentrate on what I'm saying. So that just comes naturally to me, and I think it's probably because I speak quite quickly as well, and I get nervous, and so I feel like I need to fill the space. So if I try and slow down now, like Fola's just done, it feels so unnatural.
But you get used to it. I used to be such a speedy talker that my tongue would twist all the time. So I go like my tongue, and it says you're tongue twisting. So slowing down, even though it may appear at the beginning unnatural, it's very powerful because it gives you time to think, and more importantly, it gives your audience time to incorporate what you're saying and understand you properly. And also the power of the pause. You must try sometimes. If I'm just talking, putting together every sentence that there is no moment of like theatrical point. And if you say something important, if you just pause for a moment, it makes such a massive impact on your audience. It's almost like a way to grab their attention. So we think it's the opposite, that if we don't carry on talking, we lose them. On the contrary. So introduce some pauses on your wedding speech and just breathe. And when you feel free to take a drink of water in the middle of your speech. Don't be afraid. So things that I observed when Tom presented, but you get used to it. I used to be such a speedy talker that my tongue would twist all the time. So I go like my tongue, and it says you're tongue twisting. So slowing down, even though it may appear at the beginning unnatural, it's very powerful because it gives you time to think, And more importantly, it gives your audience time to incorporate what you're saying and understand you properly. And also the power of the pause. You must try sometimes. If I'm just talking, putting together every sentence that there is no moment of like theatrical point. And if you say something important, if you just pause for a moment, it makes such a massive impact on your audience. It's almost like a way to grab their attention. So we think it's the opposite, that if we don't carry on talking, we lose them. On the contrary. So introduce some pauses on your wedding speech and just breathe. And when you feel free to take a drink of water in the middle of your speech, don't be afraid. So things that I observed when Tom presented himself, I agree, you've got your arms. You were very confident, however. You talk about being nervous, but it didn't show. I certainly didn't see it. And that's something to bear in mind as well, that sometimes how we feel in the inside is not how people perceive the message. What I would say in your case is you're very laid back when you talk. You know, it's like you're there with your mates in the pub. And depending on who you're talking to, you may choose to present yourself differently. Yusha, for instance, is the same. She's here, she's down here, little Yusha. And now that we are talking to people all the time online, this is our window shop, our shop window. And we need to put those lovely goods out there to be seen. There you go. And Tom, you've just changed your position. How can everybody see the difference that it makes?
As opposed to back here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you talk to us now, it's totally different.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's something you don't think about. It's really useful feedback.
Good. Any other comments from anyone on Tom's thread?
I liked the sort of casual, laid back approach. I mean, I agree in terms of where you position yourself, that might be slightly different, but you did come across as quite casual, quite relaxed. And for me, that makes you seem quite approachable.
I agree. And I think in this context, it's great. But if you are giving a presentation at work, perhaps it's something you can think about, because what tends to come out through our little improvisations is our natural tendencies, things we do without even thinking about. But thank you, Andy, and thank you for coming to Tom's defense. I like that.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it.
What about you, Andy? What do you feel?
I'm pretty confident I've got a lot of filler words. I think they're probably and and it's, for me, it's about speed. It's about wanting to have a really clear message of what I want to deliver and trying to keep up with that. So as I'm trying to do now, I think trying to slow myself down so I can ensure my thoughts can keep up with what I'm saying sounds like a really good bit of advice.
I agree. No, I'm not going to repeat some of the things we talked about already, but I agree. You do the yo, which is a little bit like it reminds me of a colleague that I had, beloved colleague from Ireland. Yo. But other than that, your presentation was perfect. I didn't pick on any particular things that were worth sharing. Yes. So you're off the hook, and well done.
Thank you.
Hal, what about you?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I can't remember what I said and how I said it, but generally, I know I use a lot. Here we go. The other thing I tend to do is I can sort of elongate my words, and so when I'm talking, trying to get that thought process to catch up, might just really drag or repeat the same word and sort of go and that type of thing. Doing it again. I think I might need to stop talking.
I won't put you on the spot. no, I agree. You do have some filler words. In your case, the one I noticed was the and the fact that you're not looking at the camera, because you must have, you're looking at us here.
Yeah, I got two
So
screens.
you're always talking at here. At this, I have a window in front of me, and I just think when eye contact is so important, and you do this. Clearly, this is just a logistical thing of how your screen is set up. But when we are presenting in real life to a room of people, whether that is in a meeting room or in a big stage, connecting with everyone is really important. So it's not something that we can test here because we're online, but just be mindful that that eye contact is super important. And what I'd like to do next is we're going to do some case studies. Those of you who have been on my virtual boardroom, you'll understand what we're talking about, but we have short case studies. Well, I have 3 that I have prepared. And the idea behind these case studies is that we work with a scenario that is common, because what I'm looking to get out of this particular role plays is not just saying to you, we've done the technical thing now. It's not how can we do things different, but perhaps thinking wider, thinking at the situation, what that might mean for the other person, things that are very difficult to actually consider if you're, it's not something you learn at speaking school. It's just something I want to go a little bit deeper into how we can be more effective as communicators with real life problems and scenarios. And I have, because we won't have time to do one case study per person, who would like to be the guinea pig to do the role play?
I was going to say, depends what the role play is about. Get any hint on that? So.
It's very simple. This one is about requesting a salary increase. So I want everyone to read this case study and jot some notes as to how it is you would approach that conversation. It's an improvisation. We don't need to have everything perfect. It's just to give us a scenario. Excellent. You see, I just used my filler word, excellent. Go on, Fola. Over to you. We will all be listening and then we'll share some feedback afterwards. Over to you.
Okay.
What do you want to?
Sorry. The accountant part of me is probably going to take over on the overall rationalization of the case study itself, which is what is the personal matter? That got me stuck just a little bit. So my brain assumed that the personal matter should be something tied to maybe finances that I want to speak to the person about, so that when I speak to them about the personal matter, I can easily get into the point of view of speaking about my pay. But I thought that might still not work well. So I thought probably best to talk about the personal matter. And then
just imagine I'm your line manager and I asked you, what is it that you wanted to tell me, Fola?
Oh, I have to have thought about the personal matter. Okay. Hi, Susana. Thank you for sitting with me today. I just wanted to share with you something personal that I'm currently going through. I have a very distant family member who is going through things, and I'm having to help them out personally after work to get through this. So it's a bit of it is impacting. Nope, that's not the kind of personal matter you bring to work. I'm so sorry about this. Let me start again. I will present. Oh, hi, Susana. Thank you for sitting with me today. I just wanted to speak to you about a personal matter. I have a distant relation who is going through things, so I might have to take half a day off in the next 1 month to just help them go through it and give my time. And I just wanted to find out if it was okay with you. I am happy to take it as part of my holiday allowance, and I will ensure I take it at a time where it will not impact my work. I also wanted to speak to you about some feedback concerning my current role. I just thought it would be nice to have some thoughts from you on what I'm doing well and what I'm not doing well, because I would like to develop myself a bit further. I'm really excited about the job at the moment, and I've been enjoying the additional duties I have been given. And I just want to get some feedback on how you think, as my supervisor, on how you think I'm doing, and if I can get some more personal development because I would like to, or I see this role as something I would like to do and build in the long term. So I just thought I'll use this opportunity to speak to you about it.
Great.
That's the intro I have, and
well done. The first case study is always the hardest. So the brief was we had somebody that was a little bit overwhelmed because sometimes we're too good for our own good, and you just want to present yourself to your line manager. So how do you feel you did that? What do you like
about what I did?
How you put your case across? And everybody has thought about the same, so we will discuss their view as well. So what do you think you did particularly well in terms of communicating your situation and your needs and the objectives that you had?
I think what I did well, or what I feel I did well, is being positive about still being there, even though I might not be feeling positive about the whole situation, but not bringing that negative thoughts or even directly bringing up the fact that somebody else earns more than me, because it sort of would distract from my own job itself. So that's why I feel like I hopefully spinned it in a more positive light and creating a road or an avenue to open up to talk about pay, because I'm not just asking for money, I'm also asking to do a bit more or learn more or show that I am here for the long term.
Thank you, I agree. And what about what opportunities do you think you missed?
Let's see. I'm not sure. Let me not guess what I think I missed. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if at this point I should have talked about the money directly. If there was an opportunity, I think my head tells me, depending on the answer I get or the feedback, depends on how I bring it in. So I wasn't sure how to bring it in, assuming there was an opportunity that I missed, how to bring it in directly without getting any feedback in the process.
Any thoughts from the room before I share my feedback with Folake? What do people think about good things and opportunities missed?
Yes, what I see here is that the supervisor is not very related to me or to the person that is having the problem. So, and there is a new person coming into the company. So maybe another issue I will talk about would be, how can I help you? I want you to know me better. How can I help the new person that is coming to the company? And that's it. The rest, I think it's perfect, but I will add a little bit more about the relationship between us three, like the supervisor, myself, and the new person.
Okay. This is great, Karina. The whole point about case studies is that there isn't a single way, there isn't a right way to do them. All they're designed to do is to spackle different things that might come up and prompt meaningful conversations. So the things I noted down is, it was great that you started with the context. Thank you for your time. This is something I need to talk to you about, my private matter. So it's great to always start with the context. And as you said yourself, you were very positive and conciliatory throughout. But perhaps that, in my view, in terms of portraying yourself assertively, you missed the opportunity because you were almost blaming your relatives' needs as your excuse for perhaps not being available, when the case study actually was about a person that has been working really well, super hard, and then they're not feeling valued. So perhaps you could have taken the opportunity to say, I am aware that I've been working really hard. I do my best all of the time, but I now have a personal need that means I may need to be out of work. I'm absent from work for a bit. Don't be apologetic about it. You're perfectly entitled to that. If you're a good team member, you shouldn't really hide behind, oh, but don't worry, it won't impact my work. Sometimes you might need to. And I think confidence and communication has a lot to do with where do you put yourself in the scale of priorities? Because if we're always sat on the subservient chair, it's very difficult for us, A, to assert ourselves and to also find a way to look after our needs, because we're too shy to ask. Does that make sense? And obviously, we feel very subservient. The other person doesn't feel that wave of empowerment and wave of, yes, this person has the potential, has the capability, because we're also always a little bit shy. And I often find that with relationships within the line manager and the person. There is a podcast that I recorded some time ago about balancing the relationship with your line manager, because I think we often, sometimes the things we complain about in our team members, because perhaps they're not being proactive, or they're always asking for questions, is the same way in which we behave with our line manager. We just don't notice. So I think, Falaka, you did really well to be positive, and you had things about, oh, I want to, this is a role I'm committed to, I want to build, but you forgot the person Falaka and what she needed and how a little bit upset she was. So perhaps you could have found the opportunity to say, I am, perhaps after I've been here for 2 years, can we perhaps think about not only talking about the feedback which you asked for, but also prompting a conversation about pay and reward? And don't be apologetic. We're perfectly entitled to have these discussions with our line managers. Any comments? Do you disagree with me, Falaka? Have I been too hard on you?
Oh.
Any comments from the room?
I think you make some interesting points about that, sort of having the confidence, having the assertiveness, and then how that's perceived. So with that assertiveness and that confidence, you'll be able to get a point across a lot easier. So yeah, for me, I think that's something really useful to just keep in mind. How do you maintain that impression of assertiveness? Whereas for me, it's probably not a natural position.
I think it's putting yourself at the right, almost like at the same level of importance. Your personal needs, your own world as a professional is just as important as the job you do. And if you remember that, whatever conversation you have with people will transmit that. If you believe you're as important, albeit you might be worried or frightened or fearful of bringing certain topics up, if you believe that that's important, then you can find a way to set yourself at the same level in the order of things. And of course, it takes practice, because when we don't usually have difficult conversations, and this is why the case studies that I have prepared are all a little bit tricky. When we shy away from difficult conversations, this is the same as shying away from standing up in front of a group of people and talking. The more we put ourselves on the spot and practice, the better we get at it. Do I have a volunteer for the next one? Who would like to have a go?
Go on then.
Go on, Andy. Thank you for coming to my rescue. Are you ready? You seem ready to me.
Yeah, I think so.
Go on then. How can I help you, Andy?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to have a quick discussion about some of the priorities at the moment. I currently have a lot of tasks on and conflicting priorities. I would really appreciate having a discussion with you in order to prioritize the key tasks and timeframes at which they can be realistically delivered. At present, I'm struggling to meet the commitments in the timeframe that has been requested.
And what are you proposing, Andy? Because I know I sent you something last night that I needed to be done today. So how will that impact other things?
Yeah, exactly. At present, I've got 3 other tasks that I'm working on. And then last night you requested the additional task for completion by end of day today. I'm happy that I can complete that task, but it will impact the other 3 tasks, and they will need to be delayed. If we could understand which of those 4 tasks should be prioritized and what is the reasonable delivery of each one, that would be really appreciated.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Excellent. So what do you think you did well there?
What did I do well? Gosh, I was going to tell you, start with the bits that I didn't do well.
Typical.
I think I've got the point across, particularly at the end, and I was able to clarify. Yeah, I needed to prioritize and get buy-in from them as to what those priorities needed to be.
And what opportunities do you think you missed?
I think even though I had thought about it and prepared it, I didn't start the communication clearly and sort of to the point. I thought I started it somewhat soft, and that on reflection frustrated me.
Okay. How fascinating that you say that, because one of the things I put here as the thing that struck me in a good way about the way you did that is that you were clear and concise.
Okay.
Something that we all tend to do, especially when we feel nervous, when we feel out of our comfort zone, is we ramble and we go on and on and on. And it's very difficult to stop us. So Andy here demonstrated actually, you don't need to speak for a long time to put your point across. And in communication, that is the key. Because when we go overboard, we just confuse people. So well done on that. And the other interesting point is that your perception is not always right. And at the beginning of the conversation, some of you talked about how you worry about how your message is being perceived. So a lesson here, I think, to take away is be aware that what you think is happening may not necessarily be the case at all. It could be quite the opposite. You dealt with the case study very well. Clearly what you came to me asking for help to prioritize. And that was brilliant. And you put forward that you have your struggles. Perhaps what you could have been more effective in your communication with is to propose a good outcome for you, because you went asking for help, but at no point you said, I need your help and I propose this. So you could have said, yes, if I do what you asked me to do today, just bear in mind that these other 2 things will have to wait until next week, rather than waiting for the other person to be the one that gives you their solution. But brilliantly done. Any comments from the room on Andy's little case study? Tom?
I agreed on your point about setting out the context and your sort of main point first. That's the first thing that struck me. I thought that was really good. And also that you weren't apologetic. It was, you're asking questions and sort of asking for input, but it wasn't, I can't do this, I'm afraid. It was, this isn't going to happen. How can we make it better? So I thought that was really good.
I agree. So there you go, Andy. Perceptions are not always what we can't always trust ourselves. That's what I'm trying to say, that we often do better than we think we do. And the next one, I said that the one part was about stepping outside of our comfort zone. The other part was about technique. But the last part has to do with ambition. And now that we have had a go at it, I hope you're slowly moving away from some of your earlier assumptions of perhaps I can't do this or I don't do this very well, to think, yes, I can be a good communicator. And that's certainly my journey in Toastmasters. I have learned that I can be ambitious. I'm embarrassed to share. You know, one of my dreams is to have a TED talk. I would love to have a TED talk. And before I get there, I need to do a TEDx talk. For 2 years in a row, I've presented myself with a total local TEDx talk to try and be picked, and I haven't. It doesn't matter. I will keep going. But the point is here that perhaps a few years ago, for me, dreaming about these would have been totally unthinkable. And this next section that we're going to work on together is trying to get you to think beyond your current way you're seeing yourself as a communicator. What do you think your barriers are and how far you can go with it? Perhaps put some of those doubts aside to think, yeah, why can't I be presenting at my annual conference? Or why can't I deliver things to a much higher standard that I thought I could, or up until now I think I can give? Are you up for that? So can you all share with me what has been the most challenging hurdle? So what's the most difficult thing you have done so far in the field of communication? Oh, you've been quiet for a while. I'll pick on you. What's the most difficult thing you have done?
Oh, I'm trying to think what I've done in the past.
In communication.
Yeah. I guess presenting to what, maybe a group of about 20 people.
Okay.
Not really knowing the subject matter, having prepared it and run through it, but the delivery of it wasn't brilliant. And I guess that's probably put me off, to be honest. That's an experience which just wasn't great. So you look at that and you then start to sort of build a perception around that.
You don't want to do it again.
Yeah, exactly. You're sort of going, well, I'm obviously not very good at this, didn't really enjoy it, right out of my comfort zone. And then you plow on from there. This is a number of years ago. And you sort of adapt and do what you need to do to sort of get through. But in terms of ambition, it's quite an interesting concept, because I never really thought about that type of communication in that way. It's very much, right, I just need to do it. And if I need to do it, I'll do it. But I'm not going to go out of my way to...
I'll suffer through it. So what do you think? What do you think now, if you were to set, what currently for you seems very difficult in terms of communication, something you think is unattainable for you right now, if you had to pick something?
What's unattainable? I guess doing something
difficult.
I guess it's delivering something that I'd be proud of, I think, rather than delivering something that, I just need to get through. I'd be amazed if I could come out of something and go, well, that was great. And it's rare that I do that sometimes you just in your day-to-day life, you'll present something and think, oh, it went well. But it's rare. I think most of the time I'll come out of something like that and sort of be tearing strips off it, and always thinking about it.
You say you have done the same thing Andy did when he finished his case study. We just focus on the negative. So perhaps one tool you can use to do that is record yourself. If you can, get somebody to record you. When I did my competition speech in Casablanca last weekend, I asked my husband to record me. And I thought it had been terrible, because I always think that. And then I watched it and I thought, it wasn't as bad as I thought. There you are. So one thing you can do is watch yourself. The other thing you can do is ask for feedback from people that you trust, because we need to slowly break away that belief that I can't do this very well, because we're not being objective. And as we step away from that bad thoughts, we slowly think, oh, perhaps I'm not as bad as I think I am. And we start to build up our confidence and our ambition. What about you, Yusra? What's the hardest thing you have done in terms of communicating? You're on mute.
Yeah, for me, I think is talking clearly.
Yes.
And avoiding rambling. I think sometimes I find myself just rambling and I feel that I am not understood. and avoiding you never asked me what's my filler word. Yeah, and just talking clearly. I think there's some instances I talk very clear, but then I don't know. This is the thing I struggle with, just talking clearly
But what is the hardest thing you have done in terms of a communication presentation or in your past?
Like I said before, meeting with different people, depending with the audience, there are people I very well, I communicate well. I've never had an issue, and some people that when I talk to them, I find it very hard to communicate. And there's some incidents I presented actually to my senior managers, and I couldn't actually really talk. I prepared this presentation on an annual budget, and I don't know how I went through that talking, but I mean, it's just, it came out very bad. I think that's what I thought. But, down the line, I was informed it was okay. It was delivered okay. The message was delivered. But again, it depends. Sometimes I talk okay, sometimes I don't talk okay. So it's various occasions that I talk very well is received, and sometimes I'm totally blunt and I can express.
If you could formulate, I asked Carl earlier, what do you think might be something that you now feel it would be difficult for you to do in terms of speaking?
Talking clearly.
Okay.
Avoiding rambling.
Okay.
This is the have.
And how
slowing.
How can Jusra, do you think, try to achieve that? And
this is what I'm trying to figure out. Where is exactly the issue? Sometimes, Susana, it's so weird. Sometimes I could talk very clearly and sometimes I cannot talk. So I can really figure out what's the issue. And now joining the TED Talk, I'm trying to find out what is exactly the point that I need to work on, area that I need to improve.
If you ramble, perhaps one thing you can do is, because these fears that we have and these almost like the traps we fall into are exacerbated when we are nervous and we're feeling a little bit out of our comfort zone. So, for instance, something that I try to do to help myself through that is just, we talked about slowing down. We also can just pause for a moment. If need be, ask a question back and reframe. Because when we get into that loop, it's like a hamster wheel. We just get into the loop, we keep going. And of course, it's very useful to listen to yourself, to trying to catch yourself on the filler words, just trying to catch yourself when you repeat a point. I used to repeat my point all the time. I'd say the same thing 3 times.
Yeah. So with me, if I practice, I have a presentation, I practice well, I tend to do very well. But there's some times that I could practice a million times, and when I go out, I am totally flagged. Like what Andy said, like you rumble around, you don't know what you've said, you find yourself finish presenting and you don't know what you said. Actually, it doesn't ring back, or you don't remember.
That is partly part of the challenge, because when we plan, and sometimes we suffer from trying to plan too much, because when you plan, like I had my plan for today's session. If I had tried to stick to my plan throughout this workshop, it would have been a disaster, because perhaps I would have, I worry about not remembering what I'm supposed to say. B, I may tell you something that I've already told you before, improvising because it was in my plan. So I think one of the things we need to do to communicate well is we create a plan, not to deliver that plan, but to give a structure and clear ideas in our head that we can work through. Because if we create a plan that then we think that plan is there to be met, we can derail for a number of reasons, because we worry that you're not going to remember the next point, or you're not going to remember the precise thing you're trying to say. And that tension just kills your communication. It kills your presentation. And I will always write, sorry that I have put this on silent. I don't know why these calls keep coming in. When I started working on prepared speeches, I would write a speech and I'd try and remember everything. And then when I went on stage, I would just freeze. My memory is rubbish. And of course, because I was nervous, it would be even worse. And then I went the other side. So this clearly doesn't work for me. And also it makes me feel very forced when I'm delivering something, because it's like almost like a parrot. There's no emotion. And emotion is a really important part of how we communicate. And I said, okay, I'll go freelance. I'll just try and remember my key ideas and improvise. But then the problem with that, if you only remember your key ideas, is that sometimes when you're in your middle of your speech or presentation, because you forget bits, you then lose pace, and also you hesitate. And that's not good either. So, and over time, what I've ended up doing is finding a happy medium, that I prepare enough, but I'm also very willing to improvise and go with the flow. So many of the things we've talked about today are somewhere in my plan, but we just haven't talked about it in the order that I had planned to talk about. But it doesn't matter, because the whole point is that if the topics of discussion and the important messages are out there, great. So I would encourage you to try and find that balance between preparing, but also being okay with things just going off track, because you've got your points clear, you understand what you're trying to say. And if you don't, which is what happens sometimes when we're talking about things that we don't feel comfortable with, you can say, we can pick this up at another time, or I need to research something before responding to you. Because another tendency that we have when we don't have a lot of confidence is we ramble on because we feel under pressure to respond to whatever question. And we're not an encyclopedia, we're just human beings. So being able to just stop and say, okay, not really sure what to do about this or how to say this, I won't do it, and giving yourself that permission. Make sense?
It does make sense. It does make I think I over prepare sometimes. I need to really find a method how to prepare and how to present, not only just relying on over rehearsing and preparing. And yeah, it's very, very, yeah.
You derail, because I have suffered it and experienced it myself, trust me. So who would like to share with me, what do you think are the qualities, when you think about qualities in people that you think communicate very well, what are the things you admire in how they do things?
I think people who look like they've got time, they look relaxed, and I think you see it more, like, for example, a TED talk, when people have got a big stage and they'll kind of just slowly wander across the stage making a point. And there's something really encapsulating about that. Sometimes I think when I present and you're stood still, just rigid microphone or something, you don't feel that natural. And so just that effective body language, the relaxation of someone slowly walking and looking at their feet and looking at the audience and looking at,
absolutely,
makes such a big difference.
Totally agree. And that's one of the things you would learn as part of your technique when you go to a speaking club, because you learn that it's neither good to be fixed on your spot, rigid, not moving overly too much across the stage. And a lot of the issues about either too much or too little movement come from the nerves. So the more you practice, the more relaxed you get, and then you can move and enjoy, and as you say, seem relaxed and really enjoy things. And also hands. And this is something that we lose when we're in an online scenario. We forget that if I just sit like this all the time, I lose a lot of my impact. And sometimes, if at specific times I go, wow, and I just show my hand or show a number 3, there are 3 things I want to share with you today, it's more impactful on people. So don't forget, you can use your hands less, clearly, because we're only on a little window, but don't keep them out of the way altogether, because body language, as Tom said, is really important. So what other things do you admire in people that communicate well?
I think I'll add to what Tom said. It's people who look like, in addition to what Tom has said, who look like they're just having a conversation. pretty much
Yes.
with you, and they can just answer anything, and they have no fear of almost pausing to think about what next to say. And because you feel that they are relaxed about it, you almost don't think that maybe they don't know what they're saying. That's why they pause. It just seems as if it's part of what they're doing. I think the ability to relax.
Yes.
If
And also being human. They talk about vulnerability being a really powerful thing to connect and engage with people. And what tends to happen is that when we're very worried and stressed, we emanate such tension or defensiveness that immediately our counterparty, the audience, is going to feel not at ease at all, because that somehow is something that we can all feel. So what can we do, you think, to relax more what little tips can we share with each other to just relax when we are presenting?
I've read, I'm not sure if I read it or heard it recently somewhere, that you can sort of, before you go on stage or in front of people, you can do like vigorous physical movements.
Power yourself up.
yourself.
I can do this. Yeah, that's a good tip. I do that. I have to say, I wind myself up when I need a bit of a boost. So what other things can you do to be less fearful of the people in front of you?
Maybe making an effort to engage the people you're talking to, which I find difficult when I'm in a bigger room of people, particularly if I'm presenting something more formally and you don't get that feedback or conversation. Mm-hmm. If you're sat in a room, maybe with 20 or 30 people, but it's more of an open forum, then kind of presenting in that sort of scenario seems okay, because you're saying something and sort of pausing and waiting for input. Whereas if you stood up in front of a room and presenting, and then it's that quietness, and you don't get that feedback. So maybe making an effort to engage with people a little bit, whether that's just eye contact, I don't know.
And you can engage with people through your what you're speaking as well, because you can ask somebody, Tom, don't you think? You say something, and I ask Tom, what do you think about that? Or do you remember when last week this happened? And connect with people, because if you see the people who are listening to you as your allies rather than your enemy, that is a lot less scary. I remember a few weeks ago, I have managed to convince my husband to come to Toastmasters with me. And the first time he went and did one of these improvised speeches, there was a misunderstanding. So he thought he had 2 minutes to think before doing his speech. So he stood in front of the audience for 2 minutes. We were all mortified. We thought he had just felt like, and we were all suffering. And then he started speaking and did his speech, and we all went, wow. So the point I'm trying to make here is that reality is that generally people want you to succeed. They don't want you to fail. It's only our mindset sometimes that make us feel under pressure of, am I being judged? Am I being totally picked on? That's not the case. So we can challenge that belief, because when you are listening to somebody in a meeting, what do you tend to see? The things they do well or the things they do badly?
It depends who it is.
Fair enough, Andy. I will give you that. But I think more often than not, we tend to focus on the things we think people do well. And we say, oh, they can do this so well, because we believe we can't. But that's not always the case, and we're often mistaken. And if it is the case, there are things we can do to work on that. So who would like to share with me a belief that, and because I think if we feel this thing, whatever it is, if we sometimes feel there are certain things in life that we're not good at or we struggle, it's because at some point we have accepted a negative belief. Like Carl said, 2 years ago, I presented in front of 20 people and I hated it. So forget it. I don't want to do that again. So Carl's negative belief or limiting belief is that he cannot enjoy talking to a room full of 20 people. Is that right, Carl? Is that a negative belief that you have? A limiting belief?
Yeah, I think that's safe to say that, yeah.
So somebody else's limiting belief, can I hear it? About your communication, of course. I don't want to go into painting or singing or anything like that.
Speaking to people I do not know,
Yes.
somehow I feel there's always a block in my brain once I come across them. But if I come across, one thing I've learned is mind over matter, you do it. And I almost accept that the first time might probably not go great.
Yes.
Then I tell myself that don't worry, the second or third time you do it, they become known people. So you'll cross that hurdle anyway.
Yes. And that is a really good example, because you start with the belief of, I really struggle speaking to strangers. But yet, when you do speak to them, you realize that the world doesn't come to an end. And at the moment, you think, well, by the time I know them, it will be okay. But I think what it is about really is changing their belief and saying, I may be a little bit, what's the word? I may be reluctant to talk to strangers, but actually, when I do, it's okay. So could you all take just a minute to think about what is your main limiting belief about communication, and how can you rephrase that? Who would like to share their thoughts?
I can go.
Go on, Andy.
So for me, it's the belief that I'm an introvert. So actually, I don't mind, because I've had to do it. I don't mind doing the public speaking or the presentations, because I can prepare it. But it was as someone sort of said earlier, you know, it would be, for me, the bit that I would hate is, right, here's a room where you just need to go network, and if I don't have the connections with the people, or I don't know them, that would be my limiting belief. I think it's a pretty strong limiting belief, because the bit that I struggle with is how do I reframe that?
So go on. How would you think we can reframe your limiting belief that because you're an introvert, you struggle going out to a room of people and just interacting with them? Any ideas or help for Andy?
Yeah, I'll definitely reach out for some help.
Probably because I feel exactly the same way. When you were talking about what's your limiting beliefs regarding communication, my brain was so much focused on work that as soon as Andy said networking, another part of my brain ticked up and said, "Oh yeah, that's another major one." Being in a room full of people and making small talk, pretty much. So I would say the way to reframe it in my brain would be, it's okay to walk into a room and just find just one person to start with. I don't have to speak to everyone in this room tonight. I just have to turn up today and attempt to speak to one person. And after I make it through that one person, then perhaps I might be able to find a second person. And the other thing I tell myself is, it's okay if I'm not chatting at the speed at which every other person is chatting. It's okay for me to stand in the group and listen to them and interject just where I can, and I don't have to keep up with everyone's speed of talking. And that's okay because we don't have to operate on the same wavelength. That's how I sometimes convince myself.
I think you have made two very great points. First of all is starting small, like finding one person that I can talk to, rather than being overwhelmed by the feeling of, oh my God, I can't possibly approach anyone. And the other part is about giving yourself being comfortable with not being the extrovert in the room. It's okay not to be the extrovert in the room. There will be other people exactly like you that feel just as awkward. And even extroverts suffer with this situation. So I believe that you have that. I would challenge you to say, what makes you think extroverted people don't suffer as well? They probably do. They just go along with the flow. So I think that's really good advice by Fola. Thank you, Fola. Anyone else on Andy's limiting belief? Any thoughts?
For me, Susana, I think what I struggle with when I walk in the room, I tend to think what people would be judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to like, oh, that person is judging me this way, that person is judging me this way, based on how I interact or based on their facial interaction. So that is always a problem with me. I'm like, oh, this person is judging that. And I think I also have to overcome being an introvert. It's okay to be comfortable on your own level, like what Alec said, that you need to start in a place that you feel comfortable on your own skin. You don't care not to care in a bad way. They just like to avoid other people's, perception of who you are.
Yes, Yusra, I agree with you. I think worrying about the judgments that others pass about us is a big part of it. And this happens when we're presenting and in all sorts of cases. But the whole point about my book, actually, the new one that I'm writing about on confidence, is to kill that myth that we need to somehow be superheroes, going back to Father's superpower, and be confident all the time. My point with all of the things that I'm working on at the moment is that confidence is a little bit overrated, because it's not about feeling confident all the time. It's about being able to experience our discomfort when we lack confidence, and how we guide ourselves through that discomfort and get through it. Because when we start from the objective of, oh, I just need to feel super happy, I should be able to walk into a room full of 50 people and just chat to anyone. I should be able to present to a room of 20 people and enjoy it. I should be able, says who? This is cuckoo land. I don't know a world where that is the case. What I should be able to do is be aware of my inner dialogue, be aware that I'm often biased for the worse, and therefore when I get those difficult thoughts into my head, be almost my little coach, like little Susana talking on your ear, that will say, Andy, you actually did quite well in your little case study, whether you're willing to see it or not. And Yusra, you can speak clearly if you just give yourself a point to breathe and think. And you need to become your best friend to get you through those difficult moments, because the difficult moments will always be there. I've done a lot of difficult things in my life and I've struggled with all of that. And that's the whole point, just accept it. It's not about pretending that we can just be these phony superheroes that never suffer, because in my experience, that it's not about that. And I think I want to, because we need to be wrapping up soon, I'll close with a quote that I love, that was said by Winston Churchill, that said, I'll read it to you. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And what I'd like from all of you before we close is two things. First, perhaps, what are you taking away from the session? What are the main points or the main ideas that you're taking away? And the other thing is, I'm going to put a link on the chat to a Google form, because as you know, this is a pilot. This is the first time I'm running this session. and I am sure it has plenty of development opportunities. And in the same way that I have shared my feedback, my well-intended feedback with you to help you step up and see things from a wider perspective, I need your help as well to make this session better for future participants. Is that okay?
Definitely.
So who would like to start with your takeaways?
Yeah, I don't mind. The last couple of minutes, Susana, when you're talking about as you get, I thought I'm going to get to a point where I feel fully confident presenting or being in a room, and I'm just kind of waiting for that point, and actually just embracing that will never happen, and just to accept that I'm going to have nerves and I'm presenting, and that's fine as long as I just be conscious and deal with it. Then
yeah,
then that's fine. I always think, yeah, I can do a presentation, and it comes to it, and I'm like, oh, a bit nervous now actually. Well, that's going to happen. So
you may as well
just embrace it, and try and think of the positives, the mindset of, I'm not here to fail, I'm here to deliver something positively, and hopefully people will see it that way. So,
and the world doesn't come to an end, and it's always better than we think.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
But no, thank you. Great session. Thank you very much.
Who else?
Oh, am I on mute? I think the main thing I've gotten out from today is practice. Head into it, do it, it gets better. Because obviously today I stand in front of, there were 5 people I did not know, and I haven't disintegrated whilst talking. And it's been quite encouraging, because the first time, I have to say, feedback when I gave my first introduction, when I said some things, Tom was busy nodding, and I thought, oh, it's great. He also thinks some of the things I'm thinking, so I'm not mad, and I'm not the only one who feels this way. This is another perfect human being out there who looks absolutely normal, and apparently such crazy thoughts or in his head. And obviously to me, I look at him and I think, oh, he's fine, he's got no issues, I'm sure he can speak.
Yes,
that was encouraging. And I think you have to do it you have to participate in such sessions like this, and then you realize that you just need to walk through some of the things you're thinking, and you're not the only one. I think it's in thinking that it must be only you that sometimes cripples your thoughts.
We're all on the same boat. Absolutely. Thank you, Fola. Who would like to go next?
Susana, for me, for all, I keep on mentioning only Susana, and there's a lot of participants. Sorry, guys. For me is finding my flaws, that we are all not perfect. We just need to work on it and find a way to start and work on it. And I'm really grateful to be participating here today. And I will continue to also maybe involve in TED Talk and really focus on improving this in on a proactive way, not to care about judgmental, what people think and so forth. So it's really eye-opening for me for this session today.
And it's a lot of fun as well. Even when we say things and it crashes, it doesn't. We learn and have fun. Thank you, Yusra.
I think, for me, the key things I'm taking away is don't magnify my flaws in my own head. Just, actually, a lot of people have mirrored exactly the same concerns and flaws that I feel. So actually, it's pretty normal. And I think, as Tom said, just accept it. Don't expect that you need to be an extrovert. Just accept it.
Wise advice, Andy, that you give yourself there.
Cool. I think for me, it's that ambition point, not something I'd really considered in the world of communication. And I think also just trying to come up with a bit of a plan, perhaps, in terms of how to gradually improve, taking those small steps. As I look at the extremes and go, oh, town hall presentation, don't want to do that. I just get back in my little box and live in my world, I guess. But yeah, perhaps need to make a bit more of an effort and get my brave boots on and maybe start trying to do a little bit more.
Thank you. Fantastic. Well, can you all click on that link to check that you can access it, and just please spend just a minute or two giving me some honest feedback, any thoughts you have, because as I did break my plan. I had a very tailored plan, and we have covered pretty much everything, but in a totally different route. And I would welcome any, both things that you have enjoyed, but also development points. So things that you think we could have done differently, or things that you didn't enjoy, because that's where the gift is, the constructive feedback. Now that I remember, I think Fola was in the pilot session for the first ever virtual boardroom that I did. Do you remember, Fola?
I was, and it was so nerve-wracking. You would probably be, I attend about 8 board meetings a year now. It's something that seems so abstract to me
I
then.
know, I know.
It's now a reality. So
But
that
no,
was
pilot sessions are very important to see whether the whole thing works. And no, I remember, and people, well, we're still running them, and they're very successful actually.
Oh,
People
really?
enjoy them. They find them both scary and fun, which is good fun.
I'm going to have to shoot up. I have another meeting starting at
It's so
3
lovely to
p.m.
see you. I hope
Same
the family
here.
are well and all is
Thank
great.
you. Thank
Good
you.
that
And
you're back in the
nice to
UK.
meet everyone. Thank you.
Nice
Take care.
meeting you.
All
Bye-bye.
right,
Take-
thanks. All right, bye.
Bye.
Yeah, Susana, thank you so much. Really good to meet everyone. I really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
Thank you for joining and being my guinea pig. Stay in touch.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Bye, Andy. Bye, Tom.